James Carter gripped the mop handle, his knuckles whitening as he leaned into another deliberate push. The linoleum floor gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights of the CornerMart, a small retail store on the edge of a crumbling suburban neighborhood. The air hummed with the faint drone of refrigerators, punctuated by the rhythmic ticking of a wall clock above the cash registers. It was nearing midnight, and the store was empty now, save for the occasional creak of a shelf or the distant clatter of a shopping cart abandoned in the parking lot. Most employees had clocked out hours ago, their laughter fading as they spilled into the night, eager for freedom. But not Emma Sullivan. James stole a glance toward the break room, where Emma was folding her apron with meticulous care, tucking it into a faded canvas bag that looked like it had seen better days. Her movements were quick, almost mechanical, as if she couldn't afford to waste a single second. She didn't know he was watching, not in a predatory way, but with the quiet curiosity of someone trying to unravel a puzzle. And she certainly didn't know he was her boss. To Emma, James was Ethan Brooks, the new janitor, invisible, unremarkable, just another face blending into the store's backdrop. That was exactly how he wanted it. James wasn't here to bask in the deference owed to the CEO of Carter Retail Group, a chain of stores stretching across the Midwest. He'd traded his tailored suits for a faded uniform and a mop to uncover the truth. Whispers of employee mistreatment, unfair wages, grueling schedules, and sinking morale had reached his office, and James didn't believe in fixing problems from behind a desk. This store, the chain's weakest link, was his testing ground. He'd expected to find lazy managers or disgruntled workers. Instead, he found Emma. She was different. Emma moved through her tasks with a precision that bordered on relentless restocking shelves, calming irate customers, wiping down counters, before anyone asked. She didn't just work, she outworked everyone. Yet there was something about her that gnawed at James. Her clothes were threadbare, the solace of her sneakers peeling at the edges. She never ate during breaks, never lingered to chat, and when her shift ended, she vanished into the night like a ghost. Where did she go? Why did she run? Tonight, as the clock struck 12, James paused his mopping, his eyes following Emma as she slipped on a worn jacket and slung her bag over her shoulder. The other employees, Maggie, the chatty cashier, and Tom, the stock boy, had left earlier, their voices echoing with plans for late-night burgers. Emma hadn't been invited, and she hadn't seemed to care. She headed for the exit, her steps quick, her head bowed against the autumn chill seeping through the glass doors. James set his mop against the wall, his pulse quickening. He didn't know why he felt compelled to follow her. Maybe it was the weight in her eyes, a heaviness that didn't match her tireless work ethic. Maybe it was the nagging sense that he, as her boss, should have noticed something was wrong long before now. He grabbed his coat, the coarse fabric scratching against his skin, a stark contrast to the cashmere he was used to. Stepping into the packing lot, he kept his distance, his footsteps soft against the cracked asphalt. Emma moved swiftly, her figure small under the flickering streetlights, clutching her bag as if it held her entire world. The neighborhood wasn't kind. Graffiti scarred the walls of shuttered shops, and the air carried the faint tang of exhaust and neglect. James felt absurd, trailing her like some amateur detective. What am I doing? He thought, his breath clouding. In the cold. If she catches me, she'd think I'm a creep. But something about her urgency, the way her shoulders hunched as if bracing for a blow, kept him moving forward. Emma turned a corner, her pace quickening. James slowed, his heart thudding. He wasn't built for this, sneaking through alleys, chasing shadows. He was a businessman, not a spy. But then she stopped. James ducked behind a rusted dumpster, peering out as Emma approached a weathered building with a cracked brick facade. A faded sign above the door read Hope Haven Shelter. His stomach lurched. A shelter? The pieces clicked into place with brutal clarity. The rushed exits, the skipped meals, the tired eyes. Emma was homeless. He leaned against a lamppost, trying to steady his breathing. How had he missed this? How did someone like Emma, who worked harder than anyone he'd ever seen, end up here? Through the shelter's grimy windows, he saw her step inside, not to claim a bed, but to tie on an apron and start serving soup to a line of weary faces. She moved with the same quiet efficiency as at the store, offering smiles and soft words to strangers. James's chest tightened. He could turn back now, pretend he hadn't seen anything. But he didn't. Instead, he pushed open the shelter's door, the smell of disinfectant and broth hitting him like a wave. Thin mattresses lined the walls, and volunteers bustled between tables. Emma didn't notice him, too focused on handing a blanket to an elderly man. A voice broke his trance. New here. James turned to find an older man with gray hair and a name tag reading Frank. Yeah, James stammered, his eyes still on Emma. Frank followed his gaze and smiled. That's Emma. Been volunteering here for months, even after her shifts at that store down the street. Donates part of her paycheck, too. James blinked, stunned. She donates? Frank chuckled. Says it's not about what you have, but what you give. The words hit James like a punch. He watched Emma kneel to comfort a young boy, her face softening in a way he'd never seen at the store. She was homeless, yet she was giving more than most people with full lives ever would. Why? And why hadn't he, her boss, known any of this? As Emma grabbed her bag and headed for the door, James lingered, his mind racing. He'd come to fix his company, but what he'd found was bigger than low morale or bad management. Emma Sullivan was a mystery, a contradiction, a woman carrying the weight of the world, yet lifting others up. He couldn't walk away now. Not from her. The cold clung to James Carter as he stepped away from Hope Haven Shelter, the neon signs flicker fading behind him. Emma Sullivan's silhouette had vanished into the night, but her image lingered in his mind, kneeling beside a child, serving soup to strangers, giving when she had nothing. The revelation that she was homeless had shaken him, but learning she volunteered her scarce time and money at the shelter had cracked something open inside him. He wasn't just her boss. He was a man who'd failed to see her struggle. Now, standing in the deserted street, the weight of that failure pressed against his chest. He'd vowed to help her, but where to begin? The city's pulse thrummed around him, distant traffic, a dog barking, the rustle of leaves skittering across the pavement. James pulled his janitor's jacket tighter, the coarse fabric a reminder of his disguise as Ethan Brooks. He couldn't go back to his penthouse yet, not with questions burning in his mind. Why did Emma give so much? What had broken her life apart? He needed answers, and the shelter was the only place to start. He turned back, the shelter's worn door creaking as he re-entered. The air was thick with the scent of broth and disinfectant, and the low hum of voices filled the space. Thin mattresses lined the walls, some cradling sleeping figures, others empty under the dim glow of overhead lights. Emma was gone, but the man who'd spoken to him earlier, Frank Thompson, the volunteer coordinator, stood near a coffee urn, sorting blankets. Frank's gray eyes flicked up, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Back already? Thought you were just passing by. James forced a sheepish grin, rubbing the back of his neck. Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd see if you needed an extra hand. Frank raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Instead, he tossed James a stack of towels. Plenty to do. Start folding. As James worked, his eyes scanned the room, half hoping Emma might reappear. Volunteers moved quietly, their faces etched with fatigue but softened by purpose. A young woman with a toddler on her hip thanked a volunteer for a diaper pack, her voice trembling with gratitude. An older man, his coat patched at the elbows, clutched a cup of coffee like it was a lifeline. This was Emma's world, not the CornerMart's fluorescent aisles, but this fragile haven of second chances. James's hands slowed, the towels forgotten. How had she ended up here? Frank sidled up, his voice low. "You're not here for the towels, are you?" James froze, caught. Frank's smile was knowing but kind. "It's Emma, right?" "She has that effect on people. Draws you in without trying." James hesitated, then nodded. "She's different. I work with her at the store. Saw her come here tonight. Didn't expect to find her helping." Frank chuckled, folding a blanket with practiced ease. "That's Emma. Been coming here since last spring. Volunteers. After her shifts, even when she's dead on her feet. Donates what little she earns, too." James's throat tightened. How does she do it if she's, He couldn't say the word homeless. It felt too raw, too accusing. Frank's expression soft, but his eyes held a guarded edge. Life hasn't been kind to her. Lost her mom to cancer. Drained everything she had on medical bills. Sold her apartment, gave up her dreams. Ended up here. But she's not broken, just stuck. The words hit James like a punch. He thought of his own loss, his sister, Lily, taken by cancer a decade ago. The memory of her frail hand in his, her laughter fading, stirred an ache he'd buried. Emma's pain felt like an echo, but her resilience was something he couldn't grasp. "Why doesn't she stay here?" he asked, glancing at the mattresses. "Take a bed?" Frank shrugged, stacking blankets. "She does sometimes, but most nights she sleeps in the common area or the back room. Says others need the beds more. That's just who she is." James's chest constricted. He wanted to ask more, but a new voice interrupted, a young girl. The one Emma had spoken to earlier, tugging at Frank's sleeve. Her braided hair swayed, the faded ribbon catching the light. "Mr. Frank, can I have another story?" Emma promised. Frank knelt, his voice gentle. "Emma's gone for the night, Gracie, but I'll read you one tomorrow, okay?" Gracie nodded, clutching her stuffed bear, and shuffled back to her mother. James watched, his mind racing. Emma wasn't just surviving. She was building connections, leaving light in her wake. He thought of the CornerMart, where she worked with the same quiet strength, unnoticed by her coworkers. How had he missed this? He turned to Frank, lowering his voice. "Does she ever talk about what happened before the shelter?" Frank's eyes narrowed slightly, assessing him. "Not much. She's private. Only thing she's mentioned is an ex who made things worse. Real controlling type. That's all I know." The word ex sent a prickle down James's spine. A new piece of the puzzle, sharp and unsettling. The shelter's clock ticked past 2 a.m., and Frank clapped a hand on James's shoulder. "You're welcome to help any time, Ethan. But don't push Emma. She's strong, but she's got her walls." James nodded, the name Ethan a reminder of his deception. As he stepped back into the night, the cold air stung his face, but his resolve hardened. Emma wasn't just a problem to solve. She was a person who deserved more than the world had given her. He'd find a way to help carefully, without breaking her trust. The CornerMart's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as James Carter pushed his mop across the linoleum, the familiar rhythm grounding him after the sleepless night that followed his visit to Hope Haven Shelter. The store was alive with the morning rush customers jostling carts, the beep of scanners, the faint crackle of the intercom announcing a sale on canned goods. But James's mind was elsewhere, replaying Frank Thompson's words about Emma Sullivan's past. A mother lost to cancer, an apartment sold, an ex who'd made things worse. And that shadow across the street, watching the shelter, had it been real or just his paranoia? He glanced toward the registers, where Emma stood, her hands flying over the scanner with practiced ease. She smiled at a fussy customer, her voice calm despite the woman's complaints about expired coupons. To the untrained eye, she was just another cashier, efficient and unremarkable. But James saw the strain now, the slight tremor in her fingers, the way her eyes darted toward the store's glass doors every few minutes, as if expecting trouble. The mystery of her ex gnawed at him, but so did Frank's warning. Don't push her. She's got her walls. The mop handle slipped in his grip, and James cursed under his breath, drawing a sharp look from Tina Reynolds, the store manager. Tina was all sharp edges, crisp blouse, tight bun, and a perpetually furrowed brow. She strode over, her heels clicking against the floor. "Ethan," she snapped, using his undercover name, "if you're going to daydream, do it on your own time. The stockroom's a mess, and I need those floors spotless before noon." "Yes, ma'am," James muttered, biting back the urge to remind her who really signed her paychecks. Tina's management style, micromanaging, dismissive, was exactly the kind of issue he'd come to investigate. As she walked away, he overheard her muttering to Maggie, the chatty cashier, who was refilling a receipt printer nearby. "Honestly, why do we keep people like Emma around? She's reliable, sure, but she's got no spark, no ambition. We need fresh blood." Maggie smirked, tossing her ponytail. "She's weird, Tina. Always rushing off after her shift, never hangs out. Probably got some secret double life." Their laughter grated on James, and he gripped the mop tighter. They didn't know Emma was homeless, didn't see her serving soup to strangers at 2 a.m. He wanted to set them straight, but blowing his cover now would ruin everything. The morning dragged on, and James kept an eye on Emma, noting details he'd missed before. Her sneakers were held together with duct tape, the laces frayed. Her hands, red and chapped, moved with a relentless pace, as if stopping might let the weight of her life crash down. During a lull, he ventured to the break room, hoping to catch her alone. She was there, sitting at the wobbly table, staring at a crumpled photo in her hands. It showed a younger Emma, laughing beside an older woman with her same warm eyes. Her mother, James guessed. "Hey," he said softly, stepping inside. Emma startled, shoving the photo into her bag. "Didn't mean to scare you, just grabbing a coffee." He gestured to the ancient machine in the corner, its drip echoing in the silence. Emma nodded, her expression guarded. "Long shift, huh?" He tried again, keeping his tone light. Asterisk. "Yeah," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're all long." She stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder, but as she did, her phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up with a text. The sender's name obscured, but James caught the words. "You can't hide forever." Emma's face paled, and she silenced the phone, her hands trembling. "Everything okay?" James asked, his pulse quickening. Emma forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just spam," she said, brushing past him toward the door. The lie hung in the air, and James's mind flashed to the figure outside the shelter. Was it her ex? He wanted to press her, but Frank's words echoed. "Don't push." The rest of the shift passed in a blur, with Tina barking orders and Maggie gossiping loudly about a coworker's fling. Emma kept her head down, her efficiency a shield against their scrutiny. But James noticed something new, a hesitation in her movements, a glance over her shoulder when she thought no one was watching. She was scared, and it wasn't just exhaustion. As closing time neared, James lingered near the stockroom, pretending to organize cleaning supplies. His phone vibrated in his pocket, an email from the Carter Retail Group's board, marked urgent. He skimmed it, his jaw tightening. The board was demanding his return to headquarters to address a brewing lawsuit over labor violations at another store. Perfect timing, he thought bitterly. If he left now, he'd lose his chance to help Emma, but staying risked his cover and his position. He shoved the phone away, focusing on Emma as she clocked out. She pulled on her jacket, her movements hurried, and headed for the exit. James hesitated, then followed, keeping his distance as she stepped into the night. The parking lot was empty, the streetlights casting long shadows across the asphalt. Emma's pace was brisk, her head bowed, but she stopped suddenly, glancing back. James ducked behind a car, his heart pounding. Had she seen him? She resumed walking, faster now, toward the shelter's familiar route. James stayed back, his mind racing. He needed to plan something subtle, something that wouldn't scare her off. But as he rounded a corner, his phone buzzed again. Another email, this time from his assistant. Board meeting rescheduled to tomorrow. Your presence required. James cursed under his breath. The company was closing in, and so was the shadow he'd seen last night. Emma was running out of time, and so was he. James Carter's boots crunched against the gravel outside Hope Haven shelter, the night air sharp with the promise of rain. The shelter's neon sign flickered, casting an unsteady glow across the street where he'd seen a shadowy figure watching. Emma Sullivan the night before. That image, coupled with the threatening text he'd glimpsed on her phone at CornerMart, had kept him awake, his penthouse's plush comforts mocking his unease. He'd come back to the shelter tonight, not as Ethan Brooks, the janitor, but as a man desperate for answers. Emma was in trouble, and he couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. Inside, the shelter hummed with quiet activity volunteers stacking chairs, residents settling onto thin mattresses. The scent of coffee and damp wool hung in the air, a stark contrast to the sterile chill of the store. James scanned the room, his pulse easing when he spotted Emma. She was wiping down a table, her movements brisk but weary, her braid fraying at the ends. She hadn't seen him yet, and he hesitated, Frank Thompson's warning echoing in his mind. Don't push her. But the text, you can't hide forever, was a warning he couldn't ignore. Frank emerged from a back room, his gray hair catching the dim light. He nodded at James, a knowing glint in his eyes. You're becoming a regular, Ethan, he said, tossing him a rag. Help with the tables? James caught the rag, grateful for the excuse to stay close to Emma, as he worked. He stole glances at her, noting the tension in her shoulders, the way she flinched when a door slammed. She was scared, and it wasn't just the grind of her double life. He waited until she moved to a quieter corner, folding blankets near a stack of crates. Hey, he said, keeping his voice low. Didn't expect to see you here after a full shift. Emma's eyes flicked up, wary but not hostile. Could say the same about you, she replied, her tone clipped. What's with the late-night volunteering, Ethan? James shrugged, wiping a table to mask his nerves. Couldn't sleep. Figured this place could use me. He paused, searching for an opening. You okay? You seemed off at the store today. Emma's hands stilled, her fingers tightening around a blanket. For a moment, he thought she'd brush him off again, but then she sighed, her guard slipping. Just tired, she said, but her voice cracked, betraying her. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I saw your phone. That text, it didn't look like spam. Emma's face paled, and she turned away, stacking blankets with unnecessary force. It's nothing, she snapped, then softened, her shoulders slumping. Just someone I used to know. He's persistent. James's stomach twisted. Persistent how? He pressed, careful not to push too hard. Emma hesitated, her eyes darting to the shelter's entrance. His name's Ryan, she said finally, her voice barely audible. My ex. He didn't take it well when I left. Keeps showing up, trying to, I don't know, control me again. She laughed bitterly, a sound hollow. Guess I'm not hard to find when I'm here every night. The name Ryan hit James like a jolt. The shadowy figure, the text, it all pointed to this man. He thought of his sister, Lily, trapped in a hospital bed, powerless against her illness. He couldn't let Emma face this alone. You don't have? To deal with him by yourself, he said, his voice firm. There are people who can help. Emma's eyes flashed, a mix of fear and defiance. Like who? I can't afford a lawyer. I don't even have a place to live. She stopped, catching herself, and looked away. Forget it. I shouldn't have said anything. Before James could respond, a crash echoed from the street, a trash can toppling, followed by footsteps fading into the night. Emma froze, her breath hitching. James moved to the window, peering out, but the street was empty, save for the overturned can rolling in the wind. Probably just a stray. Frank called from across the room, but his tone was tense. Emma didn't look convinced, her hands trembling as she resumed folding blankets. James's mind raced. He needed to act, but his undercover role tied his hands. As Ethan, he was powerless. As James Carter, he could hire investigators, lawyers, whatever it took. But revealing himself now risked losing Emma's trust and his chance to fix the store. Back at the shelter's entrance, Frank pulled James aside. You saw something out there, didn't you? He asked, his voice low. James nodded, reluctant to lie. Someone's been watching this place. I think it's her ex. Frank's jaw tightened. She mentioned him once. Ryan Mitchell. Bad news. Showed up a few weeks ago. Spooked her good. She won't report him, says. It'll make things worse. James clenched his fists, anger simmering. She can't keep running from him. Frank studied him, his gaze piercing. You're awfully invested for a janitor. What's your deal, Ethan? James forced a laugh, deflecting. Just don't. Like bullies. Frank didn't push, but his eyes lingered, suspicious dot as the shelter quieted. Emma grabbed her bag. Her movements hurried. James watched her slip out, the door's creak swallowed by the night. He wanted to follow, to make sure she was safe, but his phone buzzed a reminder of tomorrow's board meeting, the lawsuit looming over his company. The email subject line glared, immediate action required. He shoved the phone away, his resolve hardening. The board could wait. Emma couldn't. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of footsteps in the distance. James stepped into the cold, his eyes scanning the shadows. Whoever Ryan Mitchell was, he was closing in, and James would be damned if he let him get to Emma first. The CornerMart's break room smelled of burnt coffee and stale donuts, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow over the chipped formica table where James Carter sat, pretending to read a dog-eared magazine. His janitor's uniform itched, a constant reminder of his role as Ethan Brooks. But his mind was on Emma Sullivan. The night before at Hope Haven Shelter, her confession about Ryan Mitchell, her controlling ex who refused to let her go, had lit a fire in him. The overturned trash can, the fleeting shadow in the street, had only sharpened his resolve. He couldn't stand by while Emma lived in fear. But as Ethan, his options were limited. He needed to be careful, to build her trust without overstepping. Door swung open, and Emma stepped in, her face drawn from another long shift. She carried a stack of inventory sheets, her fingers smudged with ink from the ancient printer. She didn't notice James at first, her focus on the papers as she sank into a chair, muttering under her breath about mislabeled stock. Her braid was fraying, strands clinging to her sweat-dampened neck, and her sneakers held together with duct tape scuffed the floor. James watched her, struck again by her resilience. She was fighting battles no one else in this store could imagine, yet she never let it show. Hey, he said, setting the magazine down. Rough day? Emma glanced up, her eyes wary but softer than they'd been at the shelter. Just the usual, she said, her voice flat. Tina's on my case again. Says I'm too slow with the inventory. James frowned. Tina Reynolds, the store manager, had been riding Emma harder lately, her sharp criticisms a stark contrast to Emma's tireless work ethic. He'd overheard Tina yesterday, complaining to Maggie about dead-weight employees, a clear jab. At Emma, "Sounds like Tina's got it out for you," James said, keeping his tone light. Emma snorted, a rare spark of humor breaking through. "She's got it out for everyone, but yeah, I'm an easy target." She paused, then added, quieter, "Thanks for, checking in last night at the shelter." "I didn't mean to." Snap. James waved it off, his heart lifting at her openness. "No worries. I meant what I said. You don't have to face that guy alone." Emma's lips tightened, and she looked away, her fingers tracing the edge of the inventory sheets. "It's complicated," she said finally. "Ryan's not the type to give up, but I can handle it." Her voice wavered, betraying her doubt. And James fought the urge to press. Instead, he stood, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge and sliding it across the table. "Hydrate," he said with a grin. "You're working harder than all of us combined." Emma hesitated, then took the bottle, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You're not so bad for a janitor," she said, and the warmth in her tone was a small victory. As she returned to her papers, James left the break room, his mind racing. He couldn't confront Ryan directly, not yet, but he could make Emma's life easier here, where he had some control. The store was quieter now, the midday rush fading into a lull. James pushed his mop near the registers, keeping an eye on Tina, who was berating Maggie for a mispriced display. Tina's management was a problem, but so was the store's culture gossip, cliques, and a disregard for people like Emma. He needed to act subtly, to shift things in her favor without raising suspicion. An opportunity came later that afternoon, during a staff meeting in the stockroom. Tina droned on about sales targets, her voice sharp as she pointed out errors in the latest inventory. Emma stood in the back, arms crossed, her face impassive despite Tina's pointed glares. James, leaning against a stack of crates, seized his chance. "Hey, Tina," he said, raising his hand. "I heard we're getting new hires next month. Maybe someone like Emma could train them. She knows this place better than anyone." The room went quiet, all eyes turning to Emma, who froze, her cheeks flushing. Tina's brow furrowed, clearly caught off guard. "Emma," she said, her tone skeptical. "Training's a big responsibility. I'm not sure she's ready." Maggie snickered, but James pressed on, his voice steady. "She's got the experience, handles customers, inventory, everything. Why not give her a shot?" Emma's eyes met his, a mix of surprise and uncertainty. Tina hesitated, then shrugged. "Fine, we'll consider it. But don't expect miracles, Ethan." The meeting moved on, but James caught Emma's glance as she left a flicker of gratitude, tempered by doubt. He knew she was scared of failing, of taking on more only to lose it all. But he also knew she was capable of more than she believed. That evening, as the store closed, James lingered near the break room, hoping to catch Emma before she left. She emerged, her bag slung over her shoulder, but her steps faltered when she saw him. "You didn't have to do that," she said, her voice low. "The training thing. I don't know if I can handle it." "You can," James said firmly. "You're already doing half the manager's job. You just need a chance to prove it." Emma looked down, her fingers twisting the strap of her bag. "What if I mess it up? I can't afford to lose this job." Her vulnerability hit him hard, and he softened. "You won't, and if you need help, I'm here." "Deal?" She studied him, then nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Deal." As she headed for the exit, James felt a surge of hope. But it was short-lived. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "She's not yours to save." His blood ran cold. Ryan was watching, and he was closer than James had feared. The CornerMart's glass doors reflected the late afternoon sun, casting jagged patterns across the linoleum as James Carter swept the entrance, his janitor's broom scraping rhythmically. The store was quieter now, the usual bustle of customers, replaced by the hum of a vacuum cleaner and the faint clatter of carts being stacked. But James's nerves were taut, his eyes flicking to Emma Sullivan at the register, her hands moving mechanically as she scanned a customer's groceries. The text he'd received last night, "She's not yours to save," had burned itself into his mind. A taunt from Ryan Mitchell, Emma's ex, whose shadow seemed to loom closer with each passing day. James gripped the broom tighter, his undercover role as Ethan Brooks feeling more like a cage than a disguise. Emma's face was a mask of focus, but James saw the cracks, her shoulders hunched, her glances toward the doors more frequent since the shelter incident. His suggestion yesterday, that she train new hires, had sparked a flicker of hope in her, but it was fragile, overshadowed by fear. Ryan's presence was no longer just a suspicion. He was circling, and James knew he had to act. He'd already contacted a private investigator through a discreet email, using his real identity as James Carter, but results would take time. For now, he could only watch and wait, a role that chafed against his instincts. The store's intercom crackled, and Tina Reynolds' voice cut through. "Emma, I need you in the stockroom. Now." Emma nodded, handing off her register to Maggie, who rolled her eyes as she took over. James watched Emma disappear into the back, then resume sweeping, his ears straining for any sign of trouble. Tina's hostility toward Emma had grown sharper since James's training suggestion, and he suspected she saw Emma's potential as a threat to her own authority. He needed to stay close, but his phone buzzed in his pocket, a reminder of the board meeting he'd skipped this morning. The lawsuit against Carter Retail Group was gaining traction, and his absence hadn't gone unnoticed. Not now, he thought. Silencing the phone, a shadow fell across the entrance, and James's head snapped up. A man stood just outside, his silhouette framed by the setting sun. Broad-shouldered, with a leather jacket and a sneer that sent a chill down James's spine. He pushed through the doors, his eyes locking on the registers. James's heart thudded. It was Ryan Mitchell. He recognized the predatory glint from Frank's description at the shelter. Ryan scanned the store, his gaze narrowing when he didn't see Emma. James dropped his broom, moving toward the registers on instinct, his pulse racing. "Looking for someone?" he said, stepping into Ryan's path, his voice steady despite the adrenaline. Ryan's eyes flicked to him, sizing him up. "Mind your business, janitor," he spat, his voice low and menacing. "Where's Emma?" James held his ground, his fists clenching at his sides. "She's busy. You need to leave." Ryan's sneer widened, but before he could respond, Emma emerged from the stockroom, her arms full of boxes. She froze, the boxes slipping from her grasp and hitting the floor with a thud. "Ryan," she whispered, her face draining of color. The store seemed to hold its breath, Maggie and a few customers glancing over, sensing the tension. Ryan stepped toward her, his voice dripping with mock sweetness. "There you are, Thought you could keep dodging me?" Emma's hands trembled, but she squared her shoulders, her voice shaking but firm. "I told you to stay away. We're done." "You don't get to decide that," Ryan snapped, closing the distance. James moved faster, placing himself between them, his heart pounding. "She said leave," he said, his tone low and unyielding. Ryan's eyes darkened, and for a moment, James thought he'd swing. But Tina's voice cut through, sharp and oblivious. "What's going on here? Emma, get back to work." Ryan smirked, stepping back. "This isn't over," he said, his eyes boring into Emma before turning to James. "You're gonna regret this, hero." He shoved past, the door swinging shut behind him. Emma exhaled, her knees buckling slightly, and James caught her arm, steadying her. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft. She nodded, but her eyes were wide with fear. "He's never come here before," she whispered, he's getting bolder. Tina stormed over, her face red. Emma, explain yourself. And Ethan, why are you causing a scene? James bit back a retort, but Emma spoke first, her voice strained. It's personal. Tina, I'm sorry. It won't happen again. Tina scoffed, muttering about drama as she walked away. James guided Emma to the break room, away from prying eyes. She sank into a chair, her hands covering her face. I thought I could outrun him, she said, her voice muffled. After my mom died, he took everything, my savings, my confidence. I left, but he keeps finding me. Her words hit James like a blow, stirring memories of his sister, Lily, powerless in her final days. He knelt beside her, his voice gentle but firm. You're not alone anymore, Emma. I'll help you figure this out. She looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. Why do you care so much? You barely know me. James hesitated. The truth, I'm your boss, and I've failed you stuck in his throat. Instead, because you're worth caring about, and I know what it's like to lose someone. Emma studied him, then nodded, a fragile trust forming dot as they left the break room. James's phone buzzed again, an email from his investigator. Ryan Mitchell has a record. Assault, harassment. He's been seen near the shelter multiple times. James's jaw tightened. Ryan wasn't just a threat. He was a predator, and James was running out of time to stop him. James Carter sat on the edge of a wobbly chair, his janitor's uniform feeling like a lie he could no longer wear. The memory of Ryan Mitchell's sneer at the store's entrance yesterday, coupled with Emma Sullivan's trembling confession about his control over her life, had pushed James to a breaking point. He couldn't protect her as Ethan Brooks, the invisible janitor. He needed to be James Carter, the man with resources to stop Ryan investigators, lawyers, security. But telling Emma the truth risked everything. Her trust, his undercover mission. The fragile bond they'd built. The store was closing, the lost customers trickling out into the dusk. James had asked Emma to meet him here, his heart pounding as he rehearsed the words he'd avoided for weeks. The door creaked open, and Emma stepped in, her face etched with exhaustion and weariness. Her braid was loose, strands clinging to her neck, and her eyes held the same guarded intensity he'd seen at Hope Haven Shelter. You wanted to talk? She said, crossing her arms. If this is about Ryan again, I told you, I can handle it. James stood, his throat tight. It's not about Ryan. Well, not entirely. He took a breath, steadying himself. There's something I need to tell you, Emma. Something I should have said a long time ago. Her brow furrowed, and she took a step back, sensing the shift in his tone. What's going on, Ethan? My name's not Ethan, he said, the words tumbling out. It's James. James Carter. I'm not a janitor. I own this store, CornerMart, the whole chain. The silence that followed was deafening, the hum of the lights amplifying the void. Emma's eyes widened, then narrowed, her face a storm of confusion and betrayal. You're what? She whispered, her voice cracking. I went undercover. To check on the stores, James continued, his voice urgent. There were rumors, bad management, unhappy employees. I needed to see it for myself. But then I met you, Emma. I saw how hard you worked, what you were going through. I couldn't just walk away. He stepped closer, but she flinched, her hands balling into fists. You lied to me, she said, her voice rising. All this time, you've been watching me, pretending to care, and you're just, what, playing hero? Testing me like some lab rat? The hurt in her eyes cut deeper than James had expected, and he shook his head, desperate to explain. It wasn't like that. At first, I was just doing my job. But you're not just an employee. You're the strongest person I've ever met. I stayed because I wanted to help, because I care about you. Emma laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the small room. Care? You don't know what it's like to have nothing, James. To wake up every day wondering if you'll lose the little you've got left. You lied to my face, and now you expect me to thank you." She turned toward the door, but James's voice stopped her. "I know I messed up," he said, softer now. "But I'm telling you now because you deserve the truth, and because I can help you with Ryan. I've got people looking into him, an investigator, a lawyer. You don't have to face him alone." She froze, her hand on the doorknob, and for a moment, James thought she might stay. But then she shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "I don't need your pity," she said, and slipped out, the door slamming behind her. James sank back into the chair, his chest aching. He'd known the truth would hurt her, but he hadn't expected it to feel like this, like he'd lost something he hadn't even realized he'd gained. The next morning, Emma didn't show up for her shift. James paced the store, his eyes darting to the entrance every few minutes, but the register stayed quiet, her absence a glaring void. Tina Reynolds noticed, her lips curling into a smug smile as she muttered to Maggie about unreliable workers. James wanted to snap, to tell Tina the truth about Emma's strength, but he held back, his cover already fraying at the edges. His phone buzzed an email from his assistant, marked urgent. "Board demands explanation for your absence. Lawsuit. Escalating. Return to HQ immediately." James's jaw clenched. The corporate world was closing in, but he couldn't leave now, not with Emma missing and Ryan still out there. He slipped into the stockroom, dialing his investigator. "Any updates on Mitchell?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "He's been spotted near the shelter again," the investigator replied. "No arrests yet, but he's got a history of assault stalking. We're building a case for a restraining order." James thanked him, his mind racing. He needed to find Emma to make sure she was safe. He grabbed his jacket and headed for Hope Haven, the only place she might go. The shelter was quieter in the daylight, its brick facade softened by morning mist. Frank Thompson was outside, unloading a delivery of canned goods. He straightened when he saw James, his eyes narrowing. "Heard there was trouble at the store." "Yesterday," Frank said, his tone guarded. "Emma's here, but she's shaken. Said something about you not being who you say." James's stomach dropped. "I told her the truth," he admitted. "I'm not a janitor. I own the store. I was undercover." Frank's expression hardened, but he nodded toward the shelter. "She's inside, helping with the kids. Go easy on her, Carter. She's been through enough." James stepped inside, his eyes finding Emma immediately. She was reading to Gracie, the young girl from before, her voice steady despite the shadows under her eyes. She looked up, meeting his gaze, and for the first time, James saw something beyond anger-fear. Yes, but also a glimmer of hope. He had one chance to make this right, and he wouldn't waste it. The Hope Haven shelter's common room was bathed in the soft glow of morning light, filtering through cracked blinds to illuminate a patchwork of worn furniture and faded posters. The air carried the faint sweetness of oatmeal from the kitchen, mingling with the musty scent of old books stacked in a corner. James Carter stood just inside the entrance, his heart heavy with the weight of Emma Sullivan's absence from CornerMart, and the sting of her words in the break room. "I don't need your pay." He'd found her here, reading to Gracie, the young girl whose laughter had softened Emma's guarded edges. But now, as Emma looked up from her book, her eyes met his with a mix of wariness and something softer hope, perhaps, or exhaustion too deep to sustain anger. Gracie tugged at Emma's sleeve, oblivious to the tension. "Keep reading, Emma," she pleaded, clutching her stuffed bear. Emma smiled faintly, closing the book. "I'll be back, Gracie. Promise." She stood, brushing crumbs from her faded jeans, and crossed the room toward James, her steps measured. The shelter's hum volunteers, chatting, a baby's distant cry faded as she stopped before him, her arms crossed tightly. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice low but steady. "I need space, James." "I know," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "and I'll give it to you. But I needed to make sure you're okay. After Ryan, after everything." Her eyes flickered at the mention of her ex, and she glanced toward the shelter's windows, as if expecting his shadow. "I'm fine," she said, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. James took a cautious step closer, keeping his hands visible, non-threatening. "You don't have to be fine, Emma. Not with me. I messed up, lying to you. But I meant what? I said I want to help. Not because I pity you, but because you deserve better." Emma's jaw tightened, and for a moment, he thought she'd walk away. But then she sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Why does it matter so much to you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're some big-shot CEO. I'm just—" James's chest ached at her words, and he thought of his sister, Lily, whose laughter had faded in a hospital room. "Because I've seen what happens when people get left behind," he said. "And you're not just anyone, Emma. You're stronger than you know." She studied him, her eyes searching for a lie. Finding none, she nodded slowly. "I don't know if I can trust you," she admitted. "But I'm tired of running." Before James could respond, Frank Thompson approached, his gray eyes sharp. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his tone protective. Emma nodded, and Frank clapped James's shoulder. "She's tougher than she looks, Carter. Don't make her regret this." He walked off, leaving them in a fragile silence. James seized the moment. "There's an opening at the store," he said, keeping his voice steady. "Assistant manager. I think you'd be perfect for it." Emma's eyes widened, and she laughed, a nervous sound. "Me? Manage? I can't even keep my life together." James shook his head. "You run that store better than Tina half the time. You know the inventory, the customers, the staff. This isn't charity, it's what you've earned." Emma bit her lip, doubt warring with a spark of ambition. "What? If I fail?" she whispered. "I've lost too much to start over and lose again." James softened, his voice earnest. "You won't, and if you stumble, I'll be there. Not as your boss, but as someone who believes in you." She held his gaze, then nodded, a decision settling in her eyes. "I'll think about it," she said, and for the first time, James saw a flicker of confidence dot back at CornerMart that afternoon. Emma returned to her shift, her presence easing the knot in James's chest. But the store was a pressure cooker. Tina Reynolds, sensing a challenge to her authority, doubled down on her criticism, snapping at Emma for a misaligned shelf. Maggie, the cashier, whispered to coworkers about Emma's special treatment, her jealousy palpable. James, sweeping nearby, overheard and clenched his broom, itching to intervene but bound by his cover. His phone buzzed, an update from his investigator. "Ryan Mitchell spotted near the store this morning. No direct contact, but he's violating the restraining order's proximity limits." James's blood ran cold. Ryan was testing boundaries, and Emma's return to work might have provoked him. He glanced at her, now restocking canned goods, her movements tense but determined. He needed to act, but how? The answer came unexpectedly. During a lull, Tina left her laptop open in the office, an email from corporate visible. Staff cuts recommended to offset lawsuit costs. Start with low-performing employees. James's stomach dropped. Emma was at risk, despite her skill. He couldn't let Tina sabotage her. Slipping into the office, he forwarded the email to his personal account, a risky move but necessary. If he could prove Emma's value, he could protect her job and her chance at the assistant manager role. As closing time neared, Emma approached him, her expression resolute. "I'll do it," she said. "The assistant manager job. I'm scared, but I want to try." James grinned, relief flooding him. "You won't regret it." But as they locked up, a flicker of movement caught his eye, a figure across the street. Watching. Ryan. James's fist clenched, but Emma didn't. Notice her focus on the future. He wouldn't let Ryan take that from her. Not now, not ever. The CornerMart's aisles gleamed under the fluorescent lights, the shelves meticulously stocked, a testament to Emma Sullivan's quiet determination. It was her first week as assistant manager, and the weight of the title pinned to her chest on a shiny new name tag felt both foreign and exhilarating. The store hummed with the usual chaos. Customers haggling over discounts, the beep of scanners, the clatter of carts. But Emma moved through it with a new purpose, her clipboard clutched tightly as she directed a new hire, Tom, to restock the cereal aisle. Her voice was steady, but James Carter, sweeping nearby in his janitor's guise as Ethan Brooks, saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes. She was stepping into a role she'd never dreamed possible, and the pressure was palpable. Emma's promotion had stirred the store's undercurrents. Tina Reynolds, the manager, masked her resentment with curt professionalism, but her criticisms were sharper now, zeroing in on Emma's every misstep. "Your schedule's off," Tina snapped during a morning briefing, tossing a printout onto the table. "You've got Maggie working a double shift. Fix it." Emma flushed, scribbling notes, but James caught the tremor in her hand. Maggie, the cashier, was no better, her whispers to coworkers laced with envy. "She's only assistant manager because Ethan's got a crush," she muttered to Tom, loud enough for James to overhear. He gripped his broom, biting back a retort. Emma didn't need his defense, not yet. She needed to find her footing. James's own battles were mounting. The corporate email he'd forwarded from Tina's laptop, warning of staff cuts, loomed over him. His phone buzzed incessantly messages from the Carter Retail Group's board, demanding his return to address the escalating lawsuit. "Your absence is jeopardizing our position," the latest read. James silenced it, his focus on Emma. He'd blown. Off another meeting to stay here, risking his CEO role. But he couldn't leave her now, not with Ryan Mitchell circling. His investigator's update yesterday had been grim. Ryan was skirting the restraining order's limits, lingering near the store and shelter. No arrests yet, but the threat was growing. Emma's first real test came midday when a customer complained about a spoiled milk carton, her voice rising to a shriek. Tina was conveniently absent, leaving Emma to handle it. James watched from the cleaning aisle, ready to step in, but Emma took a deep breath, her voice calm. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Let's get you a replacement and a refund." The customer softened, and Tom, nearby, gave Emma a nod of respect. James smiled, pride swelling. She was finding her strength, one small victory at a time. That evening, in the break room, Emma slumped into a chair, her clipboard abandoned. James joined her, offering a bottle of water, a ritual that felt like their own. "You did great out there," he said, leaning against the counter. Emma managed a tired smile. "I feel like I'm faking it. Everyone's waiting for me to screw up Tina, Maggie, even me." James shook his head. "You're not faking anything. You're leading. They'll see it soon enough." Her eyes softened, and she hesitated before speaking. "I've been thinking about the shelter. What if we partnered with Hope Haven? Offered job training, maybe part-time work for people trying to get back on their feet." James's eyebrows rose, impressed by her vision. "Like a second chance program?" he asked. Emma nodded, a spark igniting in her eyes. "Exactly. I know what it's like to feel stuck. If CornerMart could help, even a little..." "Do it," James said without hesitation. "Put together a plan. I'll back you." Emma blinked, surprised by his certainty. "You really think it could work?" she asked. "Absolutely," he said, his voice firm. "You're not just saving yourself, Emma. You're saving others." Her smile widened, A rare, unguarded moment that made his chest ache. But the moment was fleeting. His phone buzzed. A text from his investigator. Mitchell seen outside Hope Haven tonight. No direct approach, but he's carrying something. Stay vigilant. James's jaw tightened, and Emma noticed, her smile fading. What's wrong? She asked. He hesitated, then decided on partial truth. Ryan's been around the shelter again. My friend's keeping an eye on him. Emma's face paled, but she squared her shoulders. I won't let him stop. She said, her voice resolute. Not this time. James nodded, admiration mixing with fear. She was fighting back, but Ryan wasn't done. The next day, Emma presented her shelter partnership idea during a staff meeting, her voice steady despite Tina's skeptical frown. It's a chance to give back, Emma said, passing out a rough proposal. We train people from Hope Haven. Hire them part-time, help them rebuild. Tom nodded enthusiastically, but Maggie scoffed. Sounds like extra work for us, she said. Tina raised an eyebrow. Corporate won't like this, Emma. It's a liability. James, standing in the back, spoke up as Ethan. It's good PR. Shows we care. I say we try it. Emma shot him a grateful look, and Tina relented, grudgingly approving a pilot program. After the meeting, Emma stayed late, drafting details at the break room table. James lingered, pretending to clean, but his eyes were on the parking lot, scanning for Ryan. The investigator's warning, he's carrying something, echoed in his mind. A weapon? A threat? He couldn't take chances, as Emma gathered her papers. She paused, looking at James. Thanks for having my back, she said softly. I don't know why you're doing all this, but it means something. James smiled, his heart lifting. You're worth it, he said, and for the first time, she didn't look away. But as they locked up, a car idled across the street, its headlights dim. James's pulse quickened. Ryan was out there, and the fight was far from over. The CornerMart's glass doors sparkled under the morning sun, a rare clarity in the air as Emma Sullivan stood at the entrance, adjusting her assistant manager name tag. The store buzzed with activity, customers weaving through aisles, the rhythmic beep of scanners, the chatter of new hires training under her watchful eye. 3 weeks into her role, Emma had transformed the store's rhythm. Her schedule's tighter, her leadership quiet but firm. Yet, as James Carter watched from the stockroom, still cloaked in his janitor's guise as Ethan Brooks, he saw the shadow. A fear in her eyes. Ryan Mitchell's idling car outside the store last week, coupled with the investigator's warning that he was carrying something dangerous, hung over them like a storm cloud. Today, though, was a milestone. The launch of Emma's Hope Haven partnership program, and James would ensure nothing, especially Ryan, ruined it. Emma moved through the store with purpose, directing Tom to rearrange a display while calming a customer's complaint with practiced ease. Her confidence had grown, but James noticed her glance toward the windows, her hand brushing the phone in her pocket. Ryan's restraining order violation had been reported, but he'd slipped through the cracks, his record not yet enough for an arrest. James's investigator was closing in, but time was tight. His own battles raged on. Another scathing email from the Carter Retail Group's board demanded his return to headquarters, the lawsuit now threatening store closures. He'd ignored it, his focus on Emma and the store that had become more. Then at business. Mid-morning, Emma gathered the staff for a briefing on the Hope Haven program. Starting next week, she said, her voice steady despite Tina Reynolds' skeptical frown. We'll train 3 shelter residents for part-time roles: cashier, stock, cleaning. It's a pilot, but if it works, we'll expand. Tom clapped, and a few others nodded, but Maggie's eye roll was unmistakable. Extra work for us. Great, she muttered. Emma held her gaze, unflinching. It's about giving people a chance, Maggie. Like we all got. The room quieted, and even Tina for once, stayed silent. James, sweeping nearby, felt a surge of pride. Emma wasn't just managing, she was inspiring. The day's triumph was cut short by a call from James's investigator as Emma prepared for the shelter's launch event that evening. "Mitchell's been arrested," the voice crackled. "Caught trying to break into Hope Haven last night with a knife. He's in custody, charged with attempted assault and violating the restraining order." James exhaled, relief flooding him. "He's done?" he asked. "For now," the investigator said. "He's facing jail time. Emma's safe." James thanked him, his eyes finding Emma across the store, laughing with a new hire. She deserved to know, but he'd wait until after the event, letting her shine without Ryan's shadow. That evening, Hope Haven Shelter glowed with string lights, its common room packed with residents, volunteers, and CornerMart staff. Emma stood at a makeshift podium, her hands steady as she outlined the program. "This isn't just about jobs," she said, her voice carrying a quiet power. "It's about believing in second chances. I've been where you are, and I know you can rise." Frank Thompson beamed, and Gracie, clutching her bear, waved at Emma. James, in the back, felt his chest tighten. She was no longer the woman running from her past. She was building a future. After the event, Emma found James outside, leaning against a lamppost as the city hummed around them. "You didn't have to stay," she said, her breath clouding. In the cool air, James smiled. "Wanted to see you shine." He paused, then added, "Ryan's gone. Arrested last night. He won't hurt you anymore." Emma's eyes widened, tears glistening, but she blinked them back. "For real?" she whispered. James nodded, and she exhaled, a weight lifting. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick. "For everything." They walked toward the store, the silence comfortable. Emma broke it, her voice soft. "I found something at the shelter, a sketchbook from when I wanted to be a designer. I'm starting again, taking classes. Because of you." James's heart lifted. "You're doing it for you, Emma. I just gave you a nudge." She smiled, unguarded, and paused at the store's doors. "You're not leaving, are you? Now that you're done playing janitor?" James grinned. "Not a chance. We've got work to do." Together, they stepped inside, partners in a future they'd both earned. Emma and James's story is a testament to the power of resilience and empathy. Emma's journey from homelessness and fear to leadership and hope shows that strength lies in rising above adversity, not avoiding it. Her selflessness volunteering at the shelter despite her own struggles reminds us that giving, even when you have little, can transform lives. James's transformation from a detached CEO to a man driven by compassion underscores the importance of seeing people, not just roles. Their story teaches us that second chances, whether in work or life, are built on trust and action, not pity or power. The lesson here is simple yet profound. No one is too broken to rebuild, and no act of kindness is too small to matter. Emma's shelter program and James's choice to stay reflect a shared belief in community and redemption. We all have the power to lift others, just as Emma and James did. If this story moved you, subscribe to Legacy Stories on YouTube for more tales of courage, compassion, and transformation. Join our community to discover narratives that inspire and remind us of the human spirit's unbreakable strength. Hit that subscribe button, and let's keep these stories alive.